WhatsApp and then do Sunday meetups. And we had the schedule almost for the whole year. I had put in a lot of effort to try to create a literary component of it, and therefore many of these events were supposed to be literary events. But then I found a certain urgency about the technology, etc., that we are doing as being more important and immediately relevant. The interesting thing about technology, at least the one that we deal with, is that every few years something starts coming in. And there was a time when after Y2K, it was that now there is nothing else in IT industry. Y2K will be solved. After that, there will be nothing. Then came the web, then came apps, then came something else. And now we are in this field of AI and machine learning. And therefore, the focus shifted from the literary thing, which we said we can continue to do as a side interest, hobby, or whatever, but do the main stuff for that. So next three events that we are doing is, and also in some sense, my focus is education. And we've been trying to look at education in a way, and at least many of people around here, is to try to see what are the real problems. What is the extension? Something is there, you go and sell it to education institutions. And we have here a few people who keep on selling things to education institutions, but that's one part. But the other part is how do we really solve the problem? And it has now been clear to me more and more that we need psychologists. That's why I was very keen on having Kaushal here, and Rupesh also has been traveling. I was to Vishay. That the whole issue about teaching is an issue about psychology. How would you allow anybody who doesn't know psychology to enter a classroom? See, it's like saying you don't know anatomy, you don't know physiology. Would you allow him to enter the operating theatre? And so this is the thing that is now coming to that the idea that we have is if you preach something, people are learned. That doesn't happen. Learning is a process. It is a cognitive process. And therefore, unless you understand cognition and look at that, it won't work. So this is where the artificial intelligence, by touching on that word intelligence, is getting you interested in that aspect. So now we are talking of intelligent behavior, which is being created without humans per se, and so on and so forth. So that's why the potential of technology like artificial intelligence in education is even more. And that's what we want to explore. So actually one of the things we had to WhatsApp group, 250 each, 500 people, etc. We hope to have about 20, 25 people who will seriously take this further. And I'm quite happy to see amongst us a young person, a developer, and this will not happen without educators and developers collaborating. You cannot expect somebody to have made some solution somewhere and then tell you we have solved your problem without ever having known what they are. So that's the general story that we would like to build for the next year. So what do we want to do now? First is, I used to call it Sunday Smile. We said Sunday Meetup for Interactive Learning Expeditions. From January 2018, we have decided we won't have this kind of a get-together. It doesn't serve much purpose because unlike what I was ingrained into, most people are quite happy to deal with WhatsApp and live stream and so on and so forth. And this thing with the formal system taught us that an in-person meeting is very important. UGC still doesn't recognize distance learning is actually a myth. If you do those things well, people get sufficiently useful information in that. So from January, I'm not going to have these Sunday meetups. So I've coined another phrase for it called weekends for lifelong learning. And therefore, the programs that I'm now developing are going to be WhatsApp run on Saturday and Sunday in that sense of the word. So they will be weekend programs. So you can be anywhere in the world and the program is of interest, you participate. We can make more and more interactive ways of doing it if that is needed. But again, I think for lifelong learning, that is not important. People are quite happy to be asynchronous in the way they do. So synchronicity is not really important. So anyway, that is the thing. So the so let me quickly come to the point because so first thing that I'm doing next, so now we are in September, October, November, December, 3 events I want to share with you. And I want to describe this to you in some lens so that you can give me ideas of it. So one of the things that I'm going to do in October, because these days, is going to be on overcoming maths phobia. Because when we start looking at, I see all these Baiju, this, that, etc. Everybody is forcing maths down the throats. But the problem is there is a serious resistance to learning because there is inbuilt fear of maths in a lot of people. And therefore, one of the thoughts I have is to remove the fear and then let all the intervention happen. So I thought I'll create a course on over. This is a picture of a child which I somehow picked from the internet. I really like it because you see the expression on that fellow's face. You say maths, and this is the expression you will find for most people. Why me? Why are you putting me? So we'll do this on Saturday 7th and 8th, 5 posts per day, and we will continue to do this 8th October even for those who want to come here. So in fact, according to the pattern, there is a post at 7, there is a post at 10, there is a post at 1. Between 10 and 1, those who want to come here and have a chat, we'll be quite happy to do that. But otherwise, the course is running for the whole 2 days. So that's the model. The themes that I have picked up, and this is where I want your ideas, and you don't have to give it right away. You can send it to me as a message. First is myths and misconceptions about learning maths. I think Shashidhar had posted that thing about Gauss. That's the story I learned in early childhood. That this teacher had come, he didn't want to work very much, so he wrote 1 to 100 on the board and sat down and expected the students should do it. And most of them were still adding, and Gauss took this thing and said, it's it's actually the standard formula for the sum of n numbers of an arithmetic progression. So this is a point. So maths is not about laboriously calculating, adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing. It is about patterns, abstraction, generalizations, which is what we are now also talking in computational thinking. And this is the kind of thing why it is very important to really understand what maths is and what it isn't. And many people are very good in maths. Any person who sings is very good in maths. Any person who dances is very good in maths because he knows exactly how many steps it is taking, whatever. And if you like to be a little theoretical, you can see any tabla fellow will tell you Fibonacci sequence, this, that, and one of the best persons in this field is Manjul Bhargava. He's our field medalist in math. He's a great music person also, and he actually talks about the mathematical patterns and all these things. Those who know a little more of this know that when you play a drum, Helmholtz functions comes, this, that, so on. But I want to talk about something to say that by making you do calculation by hand and you are not being able to do it, you are labeled as somebody who can't do math, this is wrong. It is just if your handwriting is bad, that doesn't mean that you can't write. You can write very well, but you can't, your handwriting may be bad. So similarly, you may be good in maths, but your calculation may be bad. And the person who has most dramatically talked about is Conrad Wolfram. He has a very nice video on saying that let us teach maths and stop teaching calculating. Just calculating. So whatever we want to do that. And the what and why of maths phobia. So maths phobia comes in firstly from the family, secondly from the teachers. Most teachers of maths themselves don't know maths. So now they are equally in pain that किसी तरीके से क्लास छूटे, बच्चों का सफर खत्म हो, हम घर जाएं, बच्चे पेन में हैं, किसी तरीके से ये क्लास खत्म हो, हम घर जाएं. This is one of the major causes of maths phobia. So we want to talk about that. Then measurement of maths phobia, because if you want to improve something, you have to have a measurement. So people have done all this kind of scale. It comes from general anxiety scales, etc. So मैथ्स का टेस्ट के नाम से क्या हो जाता है, मैथ्स किताब देखने से क्या हो जाता है, and so on and so forth. So the scales are there, and causes of maths phobia, and then maths are solving mysteries. So if you start changing, everybody likes to solve mysteries, and if you look at most of algebra, that x is an unknown, you can actually say this fellow is trying to hide. He doesn't want to let us know where he is, who he is, what he is, and now by doing these operations, we have found him. It makes a very different thing than going around and doing this. Salman Khan in his book has a very famous story about this, that he was an investment banker. He says somebody came to him for funding, etc. And he says, so why is your incremental unit cost higher than that of the competitors? He says, but how do you know? Only my finance fellow should know. But no, in your Annual reports, you write number of units produced, you write raw material consumed, you write this. All I have to do is to have two simultaneous equations, fixed cost, variable cost, number of units, and I can do that. Now the problem is we only think the simultaneous equations are solved in school to please the teacher so that he will give me marks. We don't see that they can have real use all over. So that is one of the aspects. So maths is solving mysteries. Then I want to say something about 21st century ways of learning maths, and I really want to emphasize that you can use computers. There is nothing wrong. See, we need to understand not only maths, any subject, as if computers existed. So today we still continue teaching as if computers have not existed. And so that is a very, very important aspect. Just like today, there is, uh, if you don't know the meaning of a word, what will you do? Go to Google quickly and find out the meaning of the word. A perfectly good thing to do. So it was no, no, unless you have already somewhere earlier in your life read that word, you can't do that, that's meaningless. So not only do you get the meaning of the word, you go to Wikipedia, etc., you get a quick knowledge of the thing. So that's one. Good learning habits, time planning, then mastering the vocabulary of maths and handling math. And that 9 is the one which I have come up with very thing, cognitive behavior therapy. So,
What's the name?
हाँ
What's the name?
किसका? ये कहा कॉग्निटिव बिहेवियर थेरेपी सीबीटी हम लोग कंप्यूटर बेस्ड ट्रेनिंग वाले आदि हो गए सो वी हैव टू रियलाइज दैट सीबीटी इज नॉट कंप्यूटर बेस्ड ट्रेनिंग कॉग्निटिव बिहेवियरल थेरेपी नाउ व्हाई इट इज वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग इज दैट it's a talk therapy. So actually it is teaching. It is basically teaching to get your fears out of it. And it's very interesting. So I've been telling this to, I told this to Rishabh, I'm in a sense telling this to Bhupesh and Kaushal that we need to create a very interesting thing. And it's a very specific field now. Using cognitive behavioral therapy to cure maths anxiety. Today, it is used in so many other kinds of anxiety, anxiety of going to a dentist or various other things. One is called GAD, General Anxiety Disorder, etc., etc. So, I have seen even on the books on cognitive behavioral therapy, there is very little about using it to overcome mass phobia. It is about overcoming social relationships, this, that, whatever. So I see there's a very interesting opportunity for using that, and it's a very systematic thing. So you can have 6 sessions to 20 sessions, you can see what it is and get that over. It's nice to see this word has come up in the 1980s or whatever and so on. But long ago, Dale Carnegie, 100 years ago, had a book called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living, which was exactly this. Except that it was not called cognitive behavioral therapy. It was very nice, popular book, sold in millions. How to stop worrying and start living. And exactly similar stuff. He said, imagine the worst and accept that the worst has happened. Now start building step by step upon improving upon it and getting to whatever you can. So I really want to do that. And then of course, so Skinner is supposed to have told one of the students that the best way to overcome maths anxiety is to learn some maths. So what we are trying to say here is a psychological issue. Let us get over it and let us actually learn some maths and get confident, because he who knows and knows that he knows is a person who's confident. So this is my thought process on it. We had done a similar program a year or two ago, right in this room. We had a few psychologists, but that was a very first program, and but we had very few people there. And after that, we did nothing about scaling it. To me, it looks that now that we have got all this experience of WhatsApp and this and that and that, it is now time to scale it, because this is something which. So many people ask me, so who's the target group? And I think the target group is actually the parents of children who have maths phobia. So actually, that is the target group. That the parents of children who have maths phobia. But children also could be tried, because there is no reason. So we don't know. This is somewhat exploratory. But the actually what I don't want to do. Have you ever met Sandeep Srivastava? एक वो जो होम स्कूलिंग कराता है, तब तो मिले उससे। हाँ तो आता है, तो उसका तो बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है। ही इज आल्सो फ्रॉम आईआईटी दिल्ली, दैट ही हैज डन अ लॉट ऑफ वर्क ऑन maths teaching, almost written books for this thing, but he has a more aggressive way. He goes and says तुम्हारे सब टीचर बेवकूफ हैं, किसी को कुछ नहीं आता है वगैरह वगैरह। I don't think that's a very good starting point, which while it may be true, But it is not really the starting point.
सब मेरे केस में देखो, मैंने अपनी बेटी को इस सारे जो schools बेवकूफ ही बना रहे हैं, and she actually believes that now. वो कहती है, अरे ये सब बुद्धू, otherwise मैं उसको सिखाऊंगा कैसे नया? So I think this is a good point to start with.
Then you were, whichever way, whatever works. But see, the reason some of us attended, आप भी थे, 2-3 और लोग थे, we attended a somewhat serious program on machine learning, which was done by Vishal Singhal in Noida. Two very interesting things came out. So when we talked about creating an AI product for any field, it turned out that somewhere or the other mathematics is involved. See, we are all looking at the magic part, but inside it is linear regression, it is this, it is K clustering, it is nearest distances, this, that. So, and I have no hesitation, the speaker, he was also not clear on the mass funda. So all the mass funda he was glossing over because of that. So I realized that इसके बिना आप सब कह रहे हो big data में चले जाओ. Without having an idea of mass of big data में क्या करोगे? Spelling लिख सकोगे उससे ज़्यादा नहीं. There is the challenge is because today it's become such a fundamental. See, all the magic that you are seeing is magic of mathematics, which is coming up. Everything. See, so you're talking about linear regression. What is the fit? Is it overfitted, underfitted, exactly fitted? Least square analysis. If you will have no understanding of maths, you just can't do. You can only be either a coder who's coding as something has been prescribed. That is also what is very interesting is at one level maths has become very important, and its generalization to computational thinking. But another thing has become very important, and many of you would have disliked this. And almost there is a movement which discourages this. English grammar कितने लोगों ने करी? How many people remember the word parsing in from their school days?
Sorry.
Parsing of a sentence in your school days.
Parsing.
करा है ना? इंग्लिश में भी और हिंदी में भी कर्ता ने करण को अधिकरण में ना नी ने. You know ये machine learning में पहला काम है parsing. So you cannot be in this field. See, this is a very funny thing. People have all this illusion. R सीख लेंगे, Hadoop सीख लेंगे और ये करेंगे. कुछ नहीं है. पहला काम है parsing. From the sentence or the utterance that you have made, first thing in all such thing is parsing from left to right, right to left, this, that, whatever. अब अगर शुरू से ही आप noun, pronoun, adjective में ही रो देते थे, तो आप उसमें कैसे करो? You understand what I'm trying to say? This is a huge problem, and that is why we are finding a situation where the IT people are not employable. They are thinking just understanding lines of code will lines of code have to be applied to a situation. So on the one hand, why it is see it's artificial intelligence, which is mimicking what humans do. Humans talk and communicate. So you have to understand communication. When we were in school, there was a lot of emphasis on grammar, composition, parsing, parts of speech, and so on, including, as I said, even in Hindi. But then came a movement which said, all this is not necessary. And therefore, people don't understand the subtleties of this, and therefore they will never be able to succeed in this because after all, that part remains. Everything that you're doing in machine learning, the first thing is an utterance by a human being. And that utterance by a human being has to be parsed into, is it an action verb? Is it a descriptive verb? Is it describing the verb? Is it describing the noun? तब तो आप जाके machine intelligence लगाओगे, search engine करोगे. So very funny is that something which most people hated, and formally the formal education system said this is not important, grammar is not important, and आजकल आप जिसके बच्चे पढ़ रहे हैं पार्सिंग आर्सिंग सिखाता है कोई स्कूल में? हाँ?
The word parsing is omitted, but they teach it. But they teach it in grammar.
No, I'm saying finding difficult is something that you can learn. So I have no problem. All that I'm trying to say is something which is the key message I'm saying is IT applications are not a question of coding alone. In fact, इन्होंने सवाल पूछा था अभिक्षक ने कि अगर वो ज़्यादा नहीं जानते, मैं कहा coding अब marginalize हो गया.
Yes.
अब real world interpretation important है in linguistic terms and mathematical terms. So I mean, I'm just trying to tell you why I think this is important.
So at the end of the day, why I asked that question was that the likes of Google or Microsoft, they've got the technology, the whole world is using them. Somewhere it is emanating, and we become end users.
That makes sense. So you will not become like Google, Microsoft, or Amazon, but you will create something which is built on. See, all of them are opening up their things because what they are saying is, once these things get adopted, it eventually goes back to them. So therefore, the idea that you must do everything yourself is no longer there. So today, what they are saying is, we have everything that you can do. You have your context, you have your customer, you create solutions for them, and all the solutions are coming from. This is the progress. So therefore, conceptual understanding is important. But so, for example, when you will go to them, they will give you some parsers, they will give you some APIs. Now, how will you apply it to your context is important. You are not going to compete with them and make a better parser or something. So Microsoft का Lewis है, इनका ये वो सब है, आप उसको use करें. So it is the same thing like पहले DBase 3 था, आप context से बताते थे DBase में हम क्या डालेंगे. फिर डेटाबेस आया Oracle, आप तय करते थे इसमें से क्या बनाऊंगा मैं, कौन सी फील्ड होगी, कौन सी की होगी, कौन सी इंडेक्स होगी, कौन सी ये होगी, कैसे मैं उसको नॉर्मलाइज करूंगा, फर्स्ट नॉर्मल फॉर्म, सेकंड नॉर्मल फॉर्म, थर्ड नॉर्मल फॉर्म. आप Oracle से compete नहीं करते थे, तो वही अभी भी होगा. आप compete उनसे नहीं करेंगे, आप वो प्रोडक्ट्स नहीं बनाएंगे जो उन्होंने बना लिया, उस पे आप अपनी कॉन्टेक्स्ट को करेंगे. So like you use a word process to write a good story.
It's like yes. Ecosystem. They have created an ecosystem.
Yes.
I just got 2 points.
हाँ.
आपने जैसे बोला कि vocabulary and grammar etc. is important for communication, and so therefore somebody who is into artificial intelligence has to start with that.
Yeah.
But if you extrapolate that, it is not just grammar. You can go up. He or she would need to know basic, at least deep biology. Would need to know
whatever
about every subject, including psychology, because after the interaction would be like.
Yeah.
So there is no end. So here, what I want to do is a paradox in the sense that you cannot do this unless you know everything, and because of the deep knowledge or the increase in knowledge, you cannot do everything.
Very
so therefore, how do you
Yeah.
interact with the
Yeah,
experts?
very good. So very good. The issue therefore is that the model is firstly that you don't have to know everything, you have to know more than a few things. Okay? So there will be a, see, like you take any system, there are system boundaries. So in your boundary, the molecular basis may not be occurring. Right? So that is the first. The second part is that instead of being a specialist, the specialist knowledge is available through the AI system. That's why we call it an expert system, etc. You need to know what is the framework, what questions to ask, what answers to get, how to interpret those answers. So therefore, the key thing to learn at a school level is not the details of physics, but how does the physicist think? Not the details of maths, but how does the mathematician think? Not the details of biology, but how biological issues arise. So how are biological matters different from physics or chemistry? So for example, you know that chemistry is what happens in the outer levels of the electrons. Nuclear physics is what happens at the nuclear. Now, this understanding is important. Now, which nuclear does what is the thing. So, the organization of the knowledge. So, what is it that psychology talks about? What answers will I get from a psychologist? What answers I will get from a sociologist? What answers I will get from an anthropologist? What answers will I get from an economist? What answers will I get from a politician? So the frameworks of various things have to be understood. Just like in a car, you say engine क्या करता है, clutch क्या करता है, fuel tank क्या करता है, tire क्या करता है, steering wheel क्या करती है, ये करती है. So you are absolutely right. At some level, you need to know everything about this thing, but you have to say what are the big questions which this field asks, what are the answers which this field gives, and then to some extent, if you want to go one step further, you have some map of that field. I shared with people map of physics, map of mathematics, recently map of computer science, and so on. So then you will talk about it. But now you need not go inside as to how this engine works. You said, I need an engine which has this capacity, which has this thing, where will I get it? So I will have a database storage system, a retrieval system, an error tracking system, a cyber safety system. You have to know a lot. So jack of all trades, which was considered bad, is what is important today.
So professional level, we call it as a team professionals.
Yeah, right.
Horizontal
But the
direction and vertical.
big change that has happened is last few decades were of specialization. So I am an engineer, electronic engineer, electrical within electronic, high power system, this, that, everything has become more and more special. Today we are talking that you have to understand general, which does not mean skimming, but the core fundamentals. And then rest of the detail you will get from experts. It can be human or machine. There is nothing to say that human expertise has become irrelevant. If there is human expertise beyond computing, you will see that. Because a lot of things which is called experience is based on that. One of the very simple things that people say, all of you are at least aware of the stock market. How many invest in the stock market? Good. Right. Now, this is a very standard question. If you knew what is the best performing stock of a day, you just move to that stock for that day and become a good day trader in it, how much money would you make? And the answer is billions. Only thing is nobody can do that. So even no AI has so far predicted the stock market. No, there were two Nobel Prize winners in economics, I think Scholz and somebody else. They got a Nobel Prize for modeling the stock market. So they were made in charge of a fund, and that fund collapsed. So some of these things are extremely difficult to predict. At one level, it is natural phenomena like earthquakes and tornadoes and cyclones and tsunamis. On the other hand, is human behavior. So human behavior today is extremely difficult to predict, and I said in one of the posts, because you cannot write an equation for it. So how an individual behaves, how small groups behave, how large groups behave, how very large groups behave is very different. So I said we can learn something from, say, in chemistry, if you look at some of the simplest molecules are water, H2O, very simple. And then you have more complicated things. Then you have polymers, which have different properties completely, because you have biomolecules, which are completely different things, DNA, etc., amino acids, proteins. You have all of them, they're only nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, etc. But the way they group and the way they interact is very different. So same thing about human behavior. Human emotions are a few, human motivations are a few, but their combination as to how they will interact is very different. How they will interact in different situations is very different. I have seen myself, many of you would have, I have seen that when I sit on the selection committee, my decision is very different from that if I were alone. I have very often felt if I had been alone, I would have never selected this person. But because you are in a committee and you don't want to do this, you do that. So that, and those of you know astrology. Astrology में ऐसे ही होता है. वो अकेला मंगल ऐसे कर रहा है, पर बुध के साथ बैठा है तो कुछ और करता है. So we believe in that when you are together, it can be very different. So this is one of the big challenges of things. So, and one of the big things, caution in all this big data and predictive. See, you say big data, predictive analytics, etc. One of the big problems there is that, and this is a well-known logical fallacy called ergo hoc propter hoc. Correlation is not causation. So two things are happening at the same time. And maybe one, but that doesn't mean it's the cause. Unless you know the dynamics of it, what are the forces which are leading to it, you will never know. So that's why many of these things are still, or that you can say is better and better, but not necessarily. And especially disruptive, point of inflection, singularities, all this can change quite a bit. Okay, so the next one that I want to do in November is what's worth learning. But that's the kind of question you are also raising. Now, in an information abundant society, see, earlier it was very simple. I jokingly say, and I hope nobody gets very annoyed, पहले क्या था, चार वेद होते थे, चारों वेद आ गए चतुर्वेदी, तीन आए त्रिवेदी, दो आए द्विवेदी, एक आया तो खाली वेदी, तो फिर वेदी कहते और तो कोई नहीं करता. But the point was that there was finite amount of knowledge. आप क्रिश्चियन हो तो आपको बाइबल आ गई, ओल्ड टेस्टामेंट, न्यू टेस्टामेंट, ये वो परफेक्ट हो गया. मुसलमान हो, कुरान आ गई, वो हो गया. So there was finite body of knowledge to know. And as it moved on, there was a time of the European Renaissance, etc., when knowing Latin, Greek, a few plays, etc., was good. In fact, 100 years ago, Eliot, who was the president of Harvard University, had created a set of volumes called 5 Foot of Bookshelf, where he said all the world's great knowledge is embedded here, and you could learn about it. Today, you just can't. It is too dynamic, and therefore, it is very important to start asking what is it that is worth learning. We are all talking lifelong learning. From Mahatma Gandhi to Nandan Nilekani and myself in between, we are all talking of lifelong learning. But what would you want to learn? And we had asked this question, and I said, if you had 10 hours to learn something new, what would you want to learn? How would you decide what you want to learn? What would be the principle for deciding what you want to learn? Investing, all of you know principles. So investing in learning, what are the principles and so on. So that's what we want to do. So I said the overarching question. And then I have some examples of traditional methods of teaching. There is a Sabartu curriculum. There on the parrot is a very nice story by Rabindranath Tagore, where he says the king found that this parrot is very jungly, etc., and he must be educated, given a good education. So they make a golden cage, they get a very this thing, lots of money spent, everybody is very happy, except that the parrot ultimately is dead and so on and so forth. Dragon's Tail curriculum is a satire on education by a person from Carnegie Mellon University who talks about Dragon's Tail curriculum, and there was everything except dragon slaying. So there was particle physics, there was human relation, there were animal rights, everything was there, but there was no dragon slaying. So when these people went out, they had no idea what to do. So that's a very nice satire. Harvard Classics is what I just now said. So learning at different stages of life. So when you're a small kid, it's different. When you're younger, it is different, and so on and so forth. Then becoming a self-directed learner, and then we're saying there are some timeless skills, some contemporary skills, and I have not used the word some urgent skills. So this is like investment, long term, short term, mid term. You need to do that. This is a thing which will be our last one for this year, and I have been suddenly. In fact, if you remember, somebody posted on one of our groups about what the French guy said about Indian heritage, etc., etc. So actually, it's very interesting. If you look at all these people like Roman Rolla, Max Muller, even Francis Bacon, not Francis Bacon, there was somebody else. I think Max Muller. All these people have spoken glorious terms about India. But in India, we actually don't recognize us. So either we are Ram Rahim followers or we just don't do anything. So I wanted to do something which is a kind of a balance about this. And as you can see from the title that will come up, Bhupesh is a very active player in this story. So between Bhupesh and so first I want to say I want to put a survey of what our knowledge management practices, how were we organizing knowledge and putting knowledge. Then there are certain specific things, Natya Shastra, Shilp Shastra, Ayurveda, Nyaya Shastra. So the idea was we had all these, and then I put this more like on mathematics. So you have Aryabhat, Panini, Bhaskaracharya, huge one. And I will tell you, I was reading once a book on ideas by a professor from MIT. When he talks about India, he says in AD 499, Aryabhat calculated the value of pi as 3.14159. He talked about the elliptic orbits, predicted the eclipse, and so on. And he said, so what is this fuss about Kepler having discovered it 1,000 years later? So in AD 500, we were 1,000 years ahead of the Western civilization. And similarly, many of the mathematical things, etc., is well known. So I think we just want to bring them back in a balanced way. We don't want to go overboard that, yes, we knew everything and so on and so forth. So we want to talk about math, science. Science is very interesting, yes.
In the last sheet, I was just wondering, like, have we missed Arthashastra?
अर्थशास्त्र हाँ वो क्योंकि वो ये सब और भी ancient है. Earthshastra is relatively contemporary. We might add. So as I said, this is an idea to put these things together.
Because that also.
Maybe I understand.
We touched the Niti Shastra.
Then we can see.
No, actually it came with Nyaya Shastra.
Huh.
When Nyaya Shastra, I was also expecting Arthashastra.
Huh. But the two don't go together, right? Nyaya is very different, economic is very different. So, but anyway, the idea is to say that at a broad, see, in fact, my postulate is very simple. Pre-industrial age, we were leaders in global thought. We missed out during the industrial age. And in a sense, we can come back in the post-industrial age. So that is the romantic idea.
Have you seen this Islamic golden age? A lot of debate is going on, and nowadays Al Jazeera is running a many part series. I think every Monday at 9 o'clock or sometimes.
Yes, I know this, for example, that Babar ka bhai was a great mathematician, and Jabra sab uske mein
There was Khwarizmi. Khwarizmi was there, and he took a lot from Greek and a lot from India and China, and then put together And according to those documentaries, all those team things, blah blah blah, they invented. And huge controversy is being created. There is a museum of 1,000 discoveries of golden Islamic period, and they have a museum in Qatar or
Yeah.
Doha somewhere.
Must be. See, it's like, there is no monopoly over brilliance in any category of people. So at different points of time, you would have people who are thinking innovatively on universal problems. And like all diffusion of ideas, this diffusion will happen, transformation will happen, you pick up something, put it in a different way, and so on and so forth.
Algebra,
Yeah.
as name suggests, is algebra, and chemistry is also same chemia. From they developed it and later on it went
Really, see, again, we must understand the idea of alchemy has been a universal idea, how to make gold out of base metals, right? So various civilizations would have done it, and depending upon how it would have progressed, that would have happened. And so I'm perfectly okay with that. But the purpose of doing this was more a little national effort and trying to get confidence that we see. I sometimes feel that I see a lot of people, including our government, we will now make 12 global world class universities, etc., etc. Now this is all stupid. As in global world class is from elsewhere. You were global world class. You had Nalanda, you had Dakshila, you had this. So even if you bring something, you will destroy it. So the whole idea is something else. So my interest in this was to, in a sense, spur some innovation. Okay. When we were young, and I don't know, because I think Rajiv Tyagi is also too young. See, there was a huge Russian propaganda which used to come from books from People Book House and so on and so forth. And the general idea there was that everything was discovered by Russians. So if you have a Raman effect, there will be somebody who has done it. If you have a Compton effect, somebody else in Russia had done it. Something else. The whole movement was, of course, they had brilliant people like Landau and so on and so forth. But the idea was to create a whole movement of pride in yourself. That yes, lots of great things had been done. And my idea was that I don't want to say that we were great, even if I can get that in algorithmic thinking we were way ahead, right? And we could create algorithms and finite element method, finite mathematics, all these things were there. Because that's how they calculated all the panchang and horoscope. They did not use differential equations. They did not use calculus, but they used method of finite differences to arrive at the same results. So that's the part, and again, not a very fanatic part of it, just a stimulant part of it. That you are from a great pedigree, you could innovate, you could do new things, and so on. Because so far we've come to a lot of things which have become that. Even we call our Allahabad University Oxford of the East. So why should we have called it Oxford of the East? We should have called it a great university of our own. But this idea of a mindset is there, and anyway, so that's not. And then I wanted to talk about discourse, because discussion is a very important part, and I think this is one thing which is fairly unique to Hinduism in that sense, that you encourage all kinds of conversations, etc., etc. And even in Ramayana, वो है नहीं, वो जो उसको चार वाक स्थिति में समझाता है राम को, यार वो तुम्हारे बाप ने कहा था तो कहा था, उससे तुम्हें क्या मतलब, ये वो, और तुम ये अपने स्वर की सोच रही है, क्या ज्वाला नाम था, क्या नाम था, जवाला, जावा, हाँ, तो जावा टेल्स राम, दिस इज ऑल नॉनसेंस, क्या बात कर रहे हो तुम, यू हैव टू सी व्हाट इज हियर एंड नाउ, एक्सेट्रा, ऑलमोस्ट लाइक a physicist saying what is observable is what matters, everything else doesn't matter. So that is what I wanted to tell you. नहीं, बुद्धिज्म ने तो उसको एक्टिवली इनकरेज किया, बिकॉज उसने एग्नोस्टिसिज्म की बात करी और एथिज्म की बात करी, ये भी कहा कि मेरे कहने को भी मत मानो, तो so I wanted to do that kind of a thing a little bit, because वो हो जाता है.
And then by proxy also you can do Prof. Shastra.
वो तो
मंडन मिश्र बैठ.
हाँ करेक्ट, वो नहीं उसके अलावा तो चैटबॉट कर लेगा. So this is some of the things that I am talking of, and there are still ideas for 2018 we need to make. Now for today, what I wanted to do was do a little bit of recap on what they did AI and ML to allow for discussion participation. But more importantly, I want to show you the video of a play that we did in London in July. So we have a recording. It's not a very high quality recording, just a recording like what he's doing here. But the interesting part was that the play is very much about AI. So I see in that play dialogue it talks about Jill Watson. It explains what AI does and how machine learning is different from traditional programming, and it talks about issues of legal rights of robots in future and so on and so forth. So what we'll do is after the break we will watch the play. It's about 70 minutes all in all, and till then we'll go through a little bit of recap on this. It's more or less the same thing. I actually put up the slides on the group also, so that those who are not here can also see. And I just said that those who like slides more, it is there. But so I want to use this time. कितना बचा है? 11 हो गया. So we have very little time. But what we'll do is any ideas you have, thoughts you have, we'll just rush through these. So the first thing is that we said, AI is not suddenly come up in the last 2 years. It's been on for a long time. So 56 was the Dartmouth conference where this thing started happening. There were languages like Lisp and Prolog, and I've actually worked with some of them. And in fact, see, Lisp is actually list processing. So the earlier idea was that you looked at data in terms of lists when you wanted to do this, and you put lots of brackets. So we used to call it non-irritating sequence of parentheses. So that is what it was. Then there was Prolog, and much of the idea was to try to bring some logic into the thing. So it was logic programming that was there. But the important point is that so the big thing that is now happening is that we are moving from science of making computers do things that require intelligence when done by humans, and we're going to have this huge debate about what is intelligence and so on and so forth. And this is an important diagram which I also put on our side, that AI is a many splendored thing. See, today machine learning is like Salman Khan, it is ruling the roast and everybody is following it. There's only one method around it. There will be so many others. So you have expert system, you have logic programming, which is Prolog, you have neural networks, computer science, unit test. Swarm intelligence is a very interesting field which is there, and fuzzy logic, and I think one of the members in the group did say that. You did your thesis in fuzzy logic or not? Yeah. So all this was around for a while. See, fuzzy logic actually, fuzzy logic had a very tragic timing. See, it is at that time that computers were already there. So we all knew zeros and one. And fuzzy is saying, no, it can be anything else. And probability had also been established. So is it probability? No, it is not probability. So it was very difficult for people to appreciate. So Zade and Ski or whatever, they did a lot of work on this. They're trying to say that we are trying to say a quantitative description to a qualitative thing. So are you tall or short? So you can't just say 4 feet 5 above is tall and this is short. That is what a crisp set said. But you say no, you are a member of the short set of this level and of the tall set of this level and so on and so forth. So they created some concept of what is called a membership function in a set rather than a 0 or 1 binary, which is called a crisp set. And for a long time it was completely dismissed until people came up with fuzzy logic cameras, television, washing machines, and started getting patents on this, where you would take something, fuzzify it, do something, then defuzzify it, and get the answer. In India, it became even worse because fuzzy mathematics was first appreciated by people in Jadavpur, etc. And in typical Bengali expression, they would call it Fuji logic, so people made even more fun of it, and it was completely ignored. And otherwise, it's quite an interesting field. In fact, at one time I wrote a paper on fuzzy evaluation, because you can't evaluate people exactly that you got 70. So we had done a whole research paper on how we could use fuzzy mathematics for evaluation and grading, because when you like any answer, so that was swarm intelligence is another very interesting thing, where you said that there is a cohesive collective behavior coming out of individual things. So ants and bees and birds in flight, etc., have been seen. That how do they manage such patterns? Which is coming out. I don't know. Huh?
The wisdom of crowds.
Yeah, but wisdom of crowds in Ram Rahim's time is a very awkward step. So
Actually, हमारे पे कभी भी ना communities groups ही बने जाते हैं.
नहीं वो है और वो फ्रैक्टल्स में भी हो सकता है ये बहुत बड़ी चीजें होती हैं कि see this is the beauty of mathematics actually most of the things that we see which we like to call great work of God is actually complexity and comes from very simple things but well I give you this simple I mean I am amazed क्या है हाइड्रोजन कार्बन नाइट्रोजन फास्फोरस हम सब लोग इसी से बन गए सब राइट चाहे हिटलर हो चाहे मदर टेरेसा हो चाहे राम रहीम हो सबका बेसिक कॉम्पोजिशन तो यही है कि नहीं so that is the problem okay so therefore it's all issue of the complexity so there was a whole area called complexity theory there's an institute in Santa Fe called Institute of Complexity you say as things become more complex these things that happen are what is called emergent behavior so go ahead so fuzzy logic, swarm intelligence, this I have already shown. This is to me a very nice summary of the difference between machine learning and traditional thing. What machine learning can do. This is again we have seen this here and many people have shown it. I am very fascinated today with chatbots and recommendation engines. So I think for education, the two actual doable problems are chatbots and recommendation engines. And if we do this in the context, they're commercially successful as well. So this is what I'm like. So what was an app earlier will be a chatbot today. And almost similar to the app development process, you have a chatbot development process. The big difference is that in the app development process, you can have your screenshots and create wireframes to go from one to the other rather easily. Here, the flow of conversation is more complex to depict. First to anticipate, then to depict, because the only tools we have so far were things like mind maps, etc. But even they are not adequate. So a lot of work is happening towards how can I succinctly define conversations. If I'm asking somebody to develop, or developing myself later on, what are the conversations that I want to map? So I have the chatbot, I have a speaker, and various things will happen. And because it is to some extent natural language processing, you can be talking about it in many different ways. And therefore, the development of a chatbot is very challenging if you are really looking at making it something like human. But the simplest ones are those which are simple FAQs. So where we have basically questions and answers. So what career should I choose? Which branch should I choose? Should I go to IIT or NIIT? So these kind of questions will be answered by a chatbot reasonably easily. But if you ask something like what will balance my various activities and find my life's meaning and purpose and fulfilling career and this thing, maybe it won't understand. Right? But still, because a lot of queries are of that kind, it will be useful. Same thing in terms of examination preparation. It is fairly clear that this is the exam questions, this is what you want as an answer, this is what is expected. So all these things which coaching institutes do to prepare you for the board exams is something which will be fairly easily doable and so on. Whether it's a worthwhile activity or not is a different question. That what happens even if you do well in the board exam is a different issue, but at least there is something that you can do. So here is a big opportunity. So what are chatbots? I am writing this over here in the sense of my idea that sooner or later we'll have to do a full session on chatbots for some set of people. So in a sense, I've started thinking like that what are chatbots, why, and maybe when we do future courses on this, chatbots will have to be a full-fledged session. So what are chatbots, why are they opportunity, how do they work, can I build one, it's a service. So you can have weather chatbot, news chatbot, scheduling bot, what does your friend. I've been playing around with many of these things to just get a feel for it, and I can see the limitations that they have. So 10 terms which will get you comfortable. First 3 terms, utterance. Utterance is what you say. And I was talking to you about parsing, etc. So from the utterance, you make out what is the intent. from the intent you say what are the entities. So if you recall your database entity, ER, related things, etc., etc. So when you say show me yesterday's financial news, that's the utterance. The entity is yesterday and financials. Intent is show news. So this is how they create their own way. Then broadcast is a message that I send to everybody. So typically when it begins with hi or whatever, so most chatbots have a starting point. They'll say hi or hello or something. We could start with namaste. So we could say this is chatbot made in India, it begins with namaste, whatever. And channels are the medium, so Facebook has a lot of them. I am a little disappointed because Facebook already has thousands of chatbots for Facebook Messenger. And I came off Facebook 5 years ago. So I went through that debate whether I should go back to it itself or not let others pursue it. But Facebook Messenger has a lot of chatbots around it, several thousands of them, not just a few hundred. And most of the tools are available for you to make a chatbot on Facebook Messenger. So it's one of the easiest things to do.
Could you give an example?
There's so many lessons. ये है वो है दुनिया भर की चीजों के लिए फोकस.
Facebook Messenger.
हाँ, Facebook Messenger. Then conversational, ये हुआ. So natural language processing. This is the first step. So when you are looking at, you are going to say how from the utterance you get the intent and entities. Now इसमें Amazon ने Lex बनाया है, Facebook का Bit.ai है और Microsoft का LUI है. So उसका acronym भी ऐसे ही है कि language something something. So now you don't have to redo this. You have to understand that and fit on that. Pilot is when you test this proof of concept, the response is anything that it does. So Jill Watson was a very famous teaching assistant जो कि Professor Ashok Goel ने use किया था for a computer science course. English language में Andy है, you can download Andy and you can start. It's not a voice, it's a text-based what you can do. Duolingo is a language. What is a very interesting because I was looking for cognitive behavioral therapy as an app or as a chatbot. तो what is a like a
नाम भी बहुत अच्छा है।
हाँ वही नाम है कि आप ना रोना धोना उससे रो कि भाई क्या है कैसे है क्यों है so वो
पाकिस्तानी बनाया तो वो की जगह रो करते हैं
रोबोट में हम लोग कुछ और बनाएंगे तो but I'm just giving you example millions of things are around and you can look at that so एंडी पे यही प्रॉब्लम हुआ था कुछ बात हुई तो मैंने उसका आई गेट कंफ्यूज बिटवीन वेदर एंड वेदर तो कहता नो आई एम नॉट सीरी आई कांट टेल यू अबाउट द वेदर सो दिक्कत वो हो जाती है बड़ी लिमिटेड लेवल पे है बट इट इज गुड टू हैव देयर वाज अनदर वन व्हिच वाज द सोशल कन्वर्सेशनलिस्ट सो उसका कोई फीमेल नाम था मैंने उसको किया कई बार अब मेरी आदत थी तो मैं 2-3 बार उसमें कहने लगा प्लीज कैन यू डू दिस प्लीज प्लीज 2-3 दिन मुझे कहा यू आर बीइंग टू पोलाइट सिंपली से कैन यू डू दिस फॉर मी सो सी हम लोगों का ट्रेनिंग थोड़ा बहुत ऐसा रहा था प्लीज थैंक यू वाला तो हम उससे लोगों से बात करते थे जब 3-4 बार हमने कह दिया उससे प्लीज 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 तो कहते यू आर बीइंग टू पोलाइट सिंपली टेल मी व्हाट आई एम सपोज्ड टू डू
What is Elisa?
हाँ
Was it Elisa?
नहीं कोई और था हाँ एलिजा तो बहुत पुराना एलिजा तो was among the first to show this conversation. This is one of the newer ones. There is so I am playing around with this to get a feel. So जैसे मैंने कहा मेरा फर्स्ट कंक्लूजन था वो हाय हेलो से शुरू करते हैं नमस्ते से शुरू करेंगे ठीक है तो उसमें उसने कहा ये प्लीज बहुत मत करिए
So even if phone is on and you just speak something on Google, you capture the
Good.
text, it's listening and it's throwing up.
हुआ तो हमारे साथ हुआ था हम लोगों के पास रखा हुआ था एलेक्सा वगैरह तो हम एक दिन अतुल पंत से कुछ बात सडनली वो बोलने लगा एक दिन और हम घर में थे आप भी लोगों में से कोई आया हुआ था वो सीरी हमारा बोल पड़ा सडनली कुछ बात कर रहे थे किसी से बगल में फोन रखा था और वो बोल पड़ा कुछ so in fact I told you about this and there have been lot of examples of bots जो कि उनको बंद करना पड़े कि वो सब गाली गलौज करते थे माइक्रोसॉफ्ट का एक बड़ा फेमस स्टोरी है कि द पीपल हु वर वर्किंग दे वर द टिपिकल वाइट यंग पीपल तो शायद निगर्स और रेसिस्ट तरह की बातें कर रहे थे वो रिलीज हुआ बिगन टू कॉल इट्स रेसिस्ट अब्यूजेस सो आई से दिस टू वेरी सो जस्ट लाइक व्हेन यू डू chip and integrated chip making you do it in a clean room clean factory when you are developing a chatbot or training you have to be as careful about what it is going to hear so जैसे घर में बच्चों को वो करते हो कि बच्चे के सामने तुमने कुछ कहा, जब वो आदमी आता है उसी के सामने कह देता है पापा तो कह रहे थे आप ऐसे। ठीक है, तो
फेसबुक पे कुछ बात कर दिया है क्योंकि
हाँ,
आपस में थे
वो तो नहीं, that is a different issue. That was a different issue. They started their own communication language. It's like children
they were learning
start.
from each other.
करेक्ट, तो वो है, see, वो उन्होंने बंद इस और कुछ नहीं किया कि वो प्रोजेक्ट उनका नहीं था. So you must understand these are commercial companies. They are encouraging experimentation which go towards there. So anything which is going beyond is not interesting to them at the moment. जापानी कंपनी होती तो शायद रख लेती उसको, वो जापानीज एरर्स से बहुत सीखते हैं. So this is last year.
But then so they were worried which way it will go. They didn't have a clue which way that would go.
That is what I'm saying. But therefore, a researcher explores that. A commercial venture closes that. For me, it would be an amazing thing that ये अपने आप से हो रही है, ऑरोरा बोरियालिस की तरीके से इतनी बढ़िया लाइट आ रही है, देखो क्या है. That's what I'm trying to say. Had they been research scientist oriented, they would follow this and say, okay, so what language have they created? Can humans analyze that language? Can I find a pattern? जैसे क्रिप्टोग्राफी में क्या करते हो, कोई कोडेड मैसेज भेजता है तो उसको ब्रेक करते हैं. So for me it would have been a challenge to see what is it that these people have come up. Can I break into that? So, but they didn't have that. So I think what, या उसका कोई उसका नहीं, वही कह रहा हूँ, नहीं कुछ उनका दूसरे एक इन लोगों की एक और दिक्कत होती है कि दे हैव टू वरी अबाउट उनकी शेयर प्राइस पे क्या असर होना है. सो अगर ऐसी खबर का कोई और मतलब होता होगा तो हो सकता है. So these are the three basic gadgets that we have today: Apple, Google, and Alexa. So I just want to quickly go through that. So one of the things is that whereas if you do normal teaching, you do for 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, or on Sundays or whatever, and therefore while there's a learning curve, there's also a forgetting curve. So after a while, you've forgotten. And this is where we talk about flip learning and mastery learning and reinforcement. If we chatbot with you all the time, it's a huge opportunity. आप कोई चीज़ कभी स्ट्राइक करिए, आपने बस बोला और वो आपको बता देगा. So that's the basic thing. So these are some of the platforms. So now, as we said, when we get into details, there's something called a framework for a chatbot development. There's a platform. So there are many of these platforms. These are 10 popular platforms. Octane.ai is quite interesting. वो काफी कुछ आपको बनाने देता है. This is the hardest part, conversation flow, because how do you imagine or anticipate a conversation between two intelligent or semi-intelligent or auto-intelligent beings? How do you predict वो क्या कहेगा? Whereas जो बाकी में था, you pressed buttons and therefore you could say ये बटन क्या है, यहाँ भेजूंगा, यहाँ भेजूंगा, यहाँ वो क्या कहेगा आपने. और especially because as humans we connect very different things. For example, very honestly, overcoming mass phobia पढ़ाते पढ़ाते उसमें cognitive behavioral therapy डालना is not a normal thing. So you will never in a conversation anticipate कि अब कोई इससे cognitive behavioral therapy for overcoming mass phobia पूछेगा. So this is where it gets difficult, and especially because you will see this very often. Google में भी होता है कि उसी वर्ड के कई माने होते हैं तो वो किसी और ट्रैक में चला जाता है. मेरे साथ बहुत होता है. आप MMPANT को गूगल करो, आपको 5-6 पेज तक मेरे बारे में दुनिया भर की बातें, उसके बाद पैंटों के बारे में मिलने लगती है. इस डिज़ाइन की पैंट, उस डिज़ाइन की पैंट, उस डिज़ाइन की पैंट. तो ये बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है. वो मैं कुछ नहीं, ये सब पैंट फिर मुझे ओ ये MMPANT लिखा है ना, तो ये तो पहले वो सब दे देगा, हमारे आर्टिकल, कॉन्फ्रेंस, ये वो 3-4 पेज तक वो देगा. और आप चलते रहो तो आपको तरह तरह की पैंट की डिज़ाइन, ये वो ये सब देने लगता है. सो दिस इज द प्रॉब्लम में ट्राइंग टू डिज़ाइन कि आप कैसे करेंगे. और मोर इम्पॉर्टेंट उसका टूल नहीं बन पा रहा है. द क्लोजेस्ट यू हैव इज समथिंग कॉल्ड माइंड मैप्स, बट दैट डजंट वर्क. सो इसमें बहुत सारे लेवल्स में देखना है, बहुत सारे गोल्स देखना है, और इसके टूल्स बन रहे हैं. बट दिस इज वन ऑफ द बिग चैलेंजेस. दैट्स वेयर इट इज बेटर टू टॉक अबाउट सिंपल स्टफ टुडे, जिसके की वेल डिफाइंड कंस्ट्रेंट्स हैं. देन इट, if for example your response is going to be I did not understand this, I can't handle that, तो फिर लोग उसको यूज नहीं करेंगे. This is the difference it says somewhere developed between a framework and this thing. and ये frameworks है, ये वो है. There are several ways of doing it. So anyway, so application of AI in education, we have now covered most of these things, so I don't really want to go through all this. I think two things. Google Translate is moving very, very fast. I just heard from my, I think son, he had gone to some Peru or something. You're stuck somewhere. उसको समझ में तो लोगों ने Google Translate से बात करके हो गया सब. So Google Translate is moving in a very big way, which means ये जो हिंदी मीडियम की परेशानी थी वो खत्म हो जाएगी. ये जो हम उसको हे दृष्टि से देखते थे ये हिंदी मीडियम वाले हैं, that is no issue. एक उससे बटन और दबा दिया वो भी इंग्लिश मीडियम हो गया. So this is going to be a big leveler and a big challenger. मतलब ये जो आके एक घुस गए ना इंग्लिश मीडियम अच्छे स्कूल में 15,000 रुपये महीना दे के अपने वो उसको तो चैलेंज आ जाएगा सरकारी स्कूल वाला गूगल के साथ बराबरी कर लेगा. So this is going to be a big demographic equalizer. People have no idea कि just putting themselves in all these walled gardens is not going to help. तो अभी तक ये था कि उसने इंग्लिश मीडियम में नहीं पढ़ा तो उसने पिक्चर भी बनाई थी ना हिंदी मीडियम अभी मैंने देखी तो नहीं पर वो पिक्चर इसमें. So this is a big thing and it is applicable for Marathi, Telugu, उसमें कई सारी भाषा उसने already मतलब I was amazed the number of languages Google Translate already has. And it has Vietnamese, it has this thing, it has so now you imagine. So मैं तो कहना चाह रहा हूँ लोगों से कि भाई your competition is no longer from here, it is from all over the world because आप भी उसी से सीख रहे हो वो भी उससे सीख रहा है उसके पास ट्रांसलेटर भी है और वो ज़्यादा मेहनती है.
जो ट्रांसलेशन सीरीज का स्कूल है उनसे गूगल ने मांगे होंगे. उन्होंने 15 नाम दिए थे तो 15 को उन्होंने
तो अभी तो मेहनत को उनकी मशीन लर्निंग बता दी अच्छा है कि खराब. So the point that the main point that I want to tell people and people are not कि इतनी मुश्किल से वो हम रियान में इंटरव्यू में देखते हैं हमने इतने पैसे खर्च करके स्कूल में भेजा बोले वो स्कूल में कोई फ्यूचर नहीं है जो वो है. See, it is no longer about that कि there are 100 seats in this school और हमने उसमें आपको कर लिया तो आपका फ्यूचर बन गया. वो नहीं है because anybody from anywhere can come and see you may do all kinds of compartmentalization etc but at a higher level not canvas. The other thing is having to happen is for the disabled. So उनका भी जो limitation था वो overcome हुआ जा रहा है because as you can see मतलब पहले तो ये होता था ना कि जब तक ब्रेल में किताब नहीं है तो कर नहीं सकते थे. फिर जॉज आया था स्क्रीन रीडर अब वो तरह तरह की जो चैटबॉट ही हो जाएगा उससे बात कर लेगा. So for the well preserved people lot of challenges have come from completely unknown quarters and this is now a truly level playing field that is coming. So this is all the takeaways that I got from our thing. See मेरा idea क्या था कि हमने इसमें से 20 करीब निकाल दिए थे. So we should go through this at leisure and then maybe identify कि ये 3 चीज़ पे हम अब काम करेंगे अगले 6 महीने. वो कैसे करेंगे क्या करेंगे we look it up and then this. So that's it and now time for a break but before the break let me quickly show that. Who's the last make 4 slide.
Sir, one question. Chatbots in English are there. If it's go for other languages, can you
See, answer is in principle everything is yes.
like
ठीक अभी आपको पता है ट्रांसलेटर है ट्रांसलेटर पहली लेवल करते हैं. हमने क्या कहा एक अटेंडेंस है लेकिन से अटेंडेंस इंग्लिश का ही है वो सारे जो एयू आईएस है वो इंग्लिश का ही है. बट मैं गूगल ट्रांसलेट से हिंदी वाले को इंग्लिश में ट्रांसलेट कर दूंगा. दैट इज द इनपुट फॉर दिस स्टेज. So the whole potential is enormous and huge because so I just wanted to share with you this thing before we break. So there's a very classic book on artificial intelligence by Patrick Henry Wilson. This is in its 3rd edition. मैं इसको पढ़ रहा हूँ. So इसमें बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है. इसमें कहा था गोल्स ऑफ एआई इसमें 2 बताए हैं और बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग है. Engineering or science. See, there is a very interesting thing that is now happening is we are now trying to cross that border of what does it mean to be intelligent as a human being. I have another very interesting book which just talks about computation as thinking. So go ahead. So what is the engineering goal of AI is to solve real world problems using artificial intelligence as an armamentarium of ideas about representing knowledge, using knowledge and assembling systems. इसमें कहीं पे वो सब कोई और वर्ड यूज नहीं किया गया कंप्यूटर विजन स्पीच ये वो ये सब they're all application or science is to use similar things to explain various sorts of intelligence. So अभी तक जो आप बात करते हो जब हम IQ की किसी ने कहा था ना आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस क्वेश्चन भी हो सकता है क्या सो IQ की बात करते थे स्टैनफोर्ड बिनेट टेस्ट की बात करते थे हार्वर्ड ने वो मल्टीपल इंटेलिजेंस की थ्योरी करी ये करी बट फिर भी ये सब क्वालिटेटिव डिस्क्रिप्टर्स हैं एज यू स्टार्ट अंडरस्टैंडिंग दीज it becomes so what is saying is science and engineering go together engineering makes products and science gets a better understanding of what it is here there is a question कि जैसे IQ होता है तो can there be something called artificial intelligence quotient answer is yes see IQ का definition क्या है you imagine a hypothetical person growing at a certain normal stage so you said this is what he should be able to do and this is his intelligence and then you say here is a person of a certain age इसका इंटेलिजेंस है इसके रेशियो को IQ कहते हैं सो इफ यू आर लेस देन व्हाट नॉर्मल पर्सन वुड हैव बीन आपका IQ 100 से कम होगा इफ यू आर मोर 100 होगा 140 60 को जीनियस मान AI में उन्होंने क्या करा है एंड यू कैन गेट दिस इन मोर डिटेल इन द कॉन्टेक्स्ट ऑफ सेल्फ ड्राइविंग कार्स सो सेल्फ ड्राइविंग कार्स आल्सो डिग्रीज ऑफ दिस थिंग तो SAE है सोसाइटी फॉर ऑटोमेटिक व्हाटएवर उसकी लेवल 1 टू लेवल 5 है जैसे CML लेवल 1 टू 5 है ऐसे आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस की लेवल 1 टू 5 बना रखा है लेवल 5 is like somebody who can do everything and level 1 is only human assistance and so on and so forth so AI will also be of that kind nobody has called it an AI quotient but there are levels of AI so even when you are doing Google search there is a level of AI happening inside.
So the important thing is when it comes to the education.
Yeah.
So we observe that children learn more when they are into conversation with peers
Yes.
than talking to a teacher or a parent. There should be some gap or some disconnects there. So learning from the peers is one level of intelligence gathering basically.
Yeah.
Whereas learning from a teacher, learning from a parent is another level of
Yes.
doing it. So the same AI application in education, at what level we are inducing, what level we are connecting?
No, we will have various ways. So exactly, see, one of the ways of looking at it, whatever is happening, augmented with AI. It's like peer-to-peer group, augmented with AI. Teacher to student, augmented with AI. Self-learning, augmented with AI. So that will be the first way of doing it. So what do you mean by when you say peer-to-peer augmented with AI is that AI is collecting all that stuff, trying to put that because you can't, when we interact we are not able to make serious notes and remember everything that happened and who said what. Whereas the machine will be able to do it and it will be able to then classify whatever you want to do, rate. In fact, there are products already, we do this for corporates. You hold a meeting, the AI produces the minutes of the meeting. You are aware of it, right? So that will happen in peer-to-peer. So you have a discussion, and then it will create a brief summary of what we have all learned from this. So and you must know this is all work in progress. हाँ पहले कपिल फिर
Sir, so आपने talking about these grades or levels of AI.
हाँ.
So is
They
there
are talking grades and levels which have been defined for automatic.
correct. So is there a way to standardize that across the board? And I'll give you examples. For example, levels for a car, levels of AI for a car. Because this is contextual, so levels for AI for a car would be different, for example, from levels of AI for a metro train or the use currently. So is there a way to standardize that across the board?
No, see, you can, if you take very general ways, you can do that. I'm sure you can create a set of terms that are all in numbers. But then in each context, you will make it different. Just like what Harvard Gardner did, with even what we call general human intelligence, he said there are 5 types, visual, oral, sensory, so, see, this is one of the big tragedies of humans, that we want one answer to everything, and that's how God was invented. But that is how it was invented. But otherwise, there is one. See, there are two ways. One is you can wonder at each thing, and then you look for universal principle. The point is, you can look for generalizations, but to look at the universal principle becomes a bit challenging because to describe that, you need to do that. And sometimes general overrides special, sometimes special overrides general. So it is a very difficult thing. But this is the kind of mystery of life that you can look at any principle, then you have exception and exceptions. You remember our old story? वो डेमोक्रेटस ने क्या था? Atoms होगा, simplest indivisible part of everything. वो atom के अंदर zoo निकल गया. Correct? The started the story was with this. Democritus thought हर चीज में एक छोटे से छोटा होगा, उससे छोटा नहीं हो सकता. Very good, very nice. अब मिला, पहले आपको वैसे लगा डाल्टन के जमाने में वो लकड़ी की बॉल बना के एटम कहता था. अब उसके अंदर कहते हैं 10 to the -3 में न्यूक्लियस है, न्यूक्लियस के अंदर क्वार्क्स एंड इलेक्ट्रॉन्स और ये वो सब है. So it's a whole. So this is the, I think, problem that we look for simplicity and end up with a lot of complexity. Yes, Media.
There's a, I think as years pass by, machine learning becomes, getting smart. Let's put it like that.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately it is best to leave the testing that is. Machine will be testing at what level of intelligence they are. That's what I.
No, see, I think one must understand between when we talk about machine intelligence, there is nothing here so far where it says that there is no limit to that. See, firstly, everything. What is the difference between earlier and today? Today we can learn from more and more data, right? But that interpretations are necessarily superior to human intelligence is not obvious, right? So there is nothing to ever imagine. So they will do that. Let them do that well.
As years pass by, I next.
Hey, just passing of years won't do it. You have to.
Suddenly they will become more intelligent and more smart.
See, this is a big difference. We are talking about general intelligence and narrow. See, even today, machines are smarter than us. They can do calculations faster. They can do spreadsheet faster. This is called narrow intelligence. The general intelligence that humans talk about is huge. I mean, it is, as of now, an infinite kind of a thing. So you're talking about creativity, you're talking about emotions, you're talking about perceptions, you're talking about various kinds of things for which there is absolutely no way. Because you can fictionally do that, but there is no evidence that you actually are able to do that. So even so in any case, I am able to believe. See, to me the issue is here is one set of colleagues who can do something very well. Learn to live with those colleagues. That's it. So everywhere you get somebody who's very good in language, somebody very good in maths, somebody very good in this, somebody very good in that. There are also these people who are very good in something. But as I said time and again, in terms of overruling the other ways that those are very difficult things to understand because so far, I said this very often, there is no data that the most intelligent people have ever ruled any part of the world at any time. So intelligence has nothing to do with ruling.
One small thing, like you said, Siri ने आपको बोला कि you are test Siri, Alice or Siri, somebody found out that you are very flexible. Okay. So in my case, it happened opposite. Siri told me I was asking certain questions, Then I told him, could you tell the password? Actually, I have husband's mobile. Could you tell the password? 3-4 times. And then I said, Siri, you are fit for nothing. The most important question you can't tell, and you are just, then what the guy asked? Please let me like I use a sentence, you are fit for nothing. Somebody else might be using certain sentence. You might be using. So slowly, machine learning means, I think it's
okay, fine. So let's say that we don't know anything definitive about it, and there will be progress. It will become more and more human-like, including in the evil aspects of humans.
Just like they said that we forgot the phone numbers when the mobile came, then we forgotten the spelling when the auto came.
I just wanted to say, I'm sorry, I'm not an expert in
none of us.
for that matter, precisely speaking, but I've got
But you are a
more of a-
navigator. You should be able to navigate across
I can
anything.
probably do a thing, sir, but the thing is, I've got more of a philosophical bent to this. Just an observation from my experiences. First thing is that one of the things that makes us very different from everything else around us is the intuitive leaps that we take in imagination, which is not possible. You look around yourself and create God, as you said just now. Or somebody says something and you connect it and create and imagine something which totally does not exist. Otherwise, we would have books like Lord of the Rings or Avatar movies. One of the things, important things in this is that the children, they have this in the maximum capacity. Unfortunately, our current education system is something which tones this down, brings logic into it and a certain set of knowledge where they stop making these intuitive leaps. The danger of this kind of learning would be that we would suppress it even further. It is already happening because of internet and because of Google and all these where they're going directly for information, not thinking about it, not wanting to find out. This is going to probably take it one step further.
Good. So let's make two quick comments on this. First, Yuval Noah Harari has a very famous book called *Sapiens*. He also has a YouTube video on this. So why is it that we survive and not the Neanderthals? And two things he says. One, he says the imagination. That we can believe in imaginary things like God. He will talk about money. So money is an imaginary thing. Yes. We saw that there was a demonetized करके money का कोई value नहीं था. So he says we believe in human rights. किसी human के अंदर काटो वाले rights दिखे हमें दिखेगा. We believe in human rights. So he said this idea. The other thing he said, where we are different from animals at lower level, is our ability to deal with strangers in large numbers. Animals also deal with people, but only with people they are familiar with. But we can deal with total strangers. I have no idea who brought me in the plane, who flew the plane, who were there in this hall of 400, I don't know, maybe 10 people. But you were sitting listening to me. You put a bunch of monkeys in the stadium and see what they do. The other part, that this is destroying, see, destroying creativity is an act of humans forced on the children. It's risky. Yeah, so therefore, because you yourself said that when children are naturally creative, we somehow say that don't be creative, follow the right thing. And this came on from a very simple reason that that was a better method of survival. So survival instinct meant stop. We used to have a joke when we go abroad. We meet Chinese, we used to talk about Chinese. So there's a Chinese professor who asked, what do you think of this? Exactly as Chairman Mao says. What do you think of this? Exactly as Chairman Mao says. So somebody said, don't you have any idea of your own? He said, I have, but I don't agree with myself. So this is the point. We are told not to do that. So the instinct for survival, and parents believe in the welfare of the children, so they don't want rebellious children who will have problems. So they want them to be conformist so that they will do exactly what is required. Now it's for you to decide that we want to create children who are going to be creative. The same technologies help in creativity. For example, for me, anything that I go to Google, half remember, it comes to me, come up, do this, correction, etc. So you can use the same tools for this. If you see that getting of information is not the goal, but the information is a raw material for your goal. So you say creativity can be whatever things you want to know, you can get this. So today is actually a great time for people who want to be imaginative, creative, and move on. So let me quickly tell you this. So this is the thing. So now I added to the third dimension, artificial intelligence in fiction. And this is taken up from Wikipedia, that there are lots of things. But this is what we have done. So there's a play called Beyond Singularity. This is just a promotional video, image. This is theaters, actors rehearsing, etc. And this is a summary of the play. So the story is about a PhD student stressed about meeting his professor to discuss his thesis. Is confronted with something even bigger, his arranged marriage. What happens to his marriage, his PhD, and his life in the roller coaster journey of Beyond Singularity. So that's the idea of the play. It was performed at the Rudolf Steiner House London on 21st, 22nd, 23rd July. It was written and directed by Harshit, who is my son. And I, in a sense, provoked this to happen. After the break, we will watch the video of this.
Thank you so very much.
तब तक तुम सेट कर दें।
Is the entire 70 minutes or